Welcome back to Morning Joe. It is absolutely pouring rain at the White House, 7:27 in the morning there. Here on the East Coast. President Biden will speak today about the ongoing evacuations in Afghanistan. The president facing bipartisan backlash for the slow and chaotic evacuation of Americans and Afghan allies. The White House says 3,000 people were evacuated from Kabul's airport yesterday. That brings the total to 9,000 since last Saturday. Joining us now, White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield. Kate, thanks for being with us this morning. Can you give us an update on those numbers? How many people do you expect to evacuate today, and how many Americans and Afghan wartime allies remain to be evacuated?
So we are continuing to increase those numbers every day, Willie. Overnight, we announced that have now moved out 9,000 people since the fall of Kabul and 14,000 since July. So we have taken control of the airport. Flights are leaving regularly. And I would say, that's not something that happens without planning. That's not something that just happens. The president planned for multiple contingencies, and that's why he pre-positioned troops in the Gulf who were able to move in immediately after Kabul fell, take control of the airport, and begin to set up flights to get people out of the country. It's the mission that he is laser focused on, getting every American who wants to leave Afghanistan out of Afghanistan and moving people out as quickly as possible.
Kate, obviously we're fighting the pouring rain behind you in terms of the audio here, but as you look back at it now, as President Biden watches what's unfolded over the last 5 or 6 days, would it have made more sense to have secured the airport, to have kept Bagram perhaps, to evacuate all of these people before American troops left? In other words, isn't what we're seeing now play out, the chaos at the airport and the fact that American troops have had to go back into the country, doesn't that make the case for having stayed long enough to get the people out first?
I'm glad you asked this, because this is a question that people have raised, and I think it's important to remember that at any point that we began a mass evacuation of Americans and Afghan allies out of Afghanistan, it was going to signal the imminent collapse of the Afghan government. It was going to be a chaotic situation, whether it happened 5 months ago, whether it happened 5 weeks ago, or whether it happened this week. So our effort was to continue to try to ensure that the Afghan government had every opportunity to remain in place. Now, again, we prepared for every contingency. We knew the possibility of a rapid fall of Kabul was possible, and that's why we prepared and put these troops in the region ready to go. 48 hours after the fall of Kabul, we had evacuated all of our embassy personnel safely to the airport without a shot fired, and we had begun evacuation flights. And again, that is not something that just happens. That requires foresight and planning, and that's what President Biden and his team did.
So, Kate, on July 8th, President Biden, as you know, said a Taliban takeover of the country is not inevitable. In fact, he called it highly unlikely. How did he get that so wrong as the Taliban rolled across the country in the span of about 8 or 9 days?
He was talking about whether this was a possibility and not an inevitability. And that's an important distinction. Look, obviously, as we've seen in all of the reporting over the last week, the president saw a wide array of intelligence. But you heard from General Milley, you heard from Director Haynes. They saw no intelligence that suggested that Kabul would fall within 11 days. That was not a scenario that was put in front of the president. So he saw a wide array of intelligence, but ultimately, at the end of the day, he's the commander-in-chief, and the buck stops with him. And he made the decision. He believes that sending another generation of American men and women into Afghanistan to fight, to prop up a government whose leadership was clearly unwilling to fight for itself, is not in our national interest, and it's not in the interest of our troops. And so this was a decision that he made, knowing that this was the right thing for our men and women in uniform, and also in the national interest of the United States.
But so, Kate, I think a lot of people in this country agree with you. A lot of people voted for the idea of getting out of Afghanistan. They just didn't vote for or support the way it's playing out right now. So does the president not have any regrets about the way this was handled as he watches these scenes in Afghanistan?
Of course, these scenes are heartbreaking. Of course, the images that we've seen over the last week are difficult. I think at any time when a government and a 300,000-person army essentially melts away, there's going to be some level of chaos. That doesn't make it acceptable. It's not acceptable to the president. That's why he is moving. It's why he has directed the Department of Defense to move to get every American out of Afghanistan who wants to get out, to get our Afghan allies out of Afghanistan. It's why we're able to have flights taking off, and the numbers of people that we're seeing continue to increase each day that we're moving out of the country. So there is no question, of course, those scenes of chaos are heartbreaking, but we are working to get every American out of Afghanistan who wants to get out of Afghanistan.
Kate, can I ask you about the balance of evacuating people from Afghanistan and dealing with the weaponry that has been left behind? What kind of weaponry is in Taliban hands? What's the plan for that? And do you wait until you evacuate everyone you want to evacuate?
Well, Mika, those are not details that I'm going to discuss in public. Those are obviously operational details that our military is handling. I will say that our focus right now is on getting every single American out of Afghanistan who wants to get out of Afghanistan, and getting out Afghan allies as well. So we are running arguably the largest airlift in history to get these people out of the country. This is a logistical undertaking that only the United States military can execute on, and that's what they're doing. So I will let the military speak to those operational details on the ground.
Peter Baker has the next question. Peter?
Kate, thank you for doing this. The president in the last few days has been critical of President Trump, has been critical of the Afghan government that has fallen, the Afghan security forces, even suggested the Afghan civilians were responsible for the fact that they were not evacuated sooner because they didn't want to leave. He's not been critical, at least not very much anyway, of the Taliban. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about that. Is that some sort of a calculation at this point that we're trying not to offend them while we're evacuating? What does he have to say about what the Taliban is going to do to that country, already doing to that country, even aside from America's friends? They're already going to house. They're meeting protests with force. They're beating journalists in the streets. What does he have to say about the Taliban?
Well, Peter, I would say, of course, he does not condone that kind of behavior. But look, I think the most important thing in this moment right now is to get people out of the country who want to get out of the country. And so we are working with the Taliban to facilitate safe passage of people to the airport. We're very focused on the logistical and operational pieces that are necessary right now to get these people out. That's the immediate focus. Of course, writ large, we will have discussions. The president will speak to how we will interact, how the United States will interact with an Afghanistan run by the Taliban. We'll discuss that moving forward. I think with regard to the human rights abuses, I would say, the president has said, obviously, what we see, images of women and children in Afghanistan, of course, it's appalling. It's horrifying. What he would say is the best way for us to combat that around the world is not for the United States to put boots on the ground in every country where there are human rights abuses taking place. That we can do this through our economic levers, through humanitarian aid, and through rallying the world to put pressure on these people. But his belief is that we can't defend the human rights of every single person around the globe by putting American men and women in harm's way.
John Hellman.
Hey, Kate, it's Heilman. I think everyone can foresee, as you talk about getting first Americans out and then America's Afghan allies out of the country in the days and weeks ahead, everyone can foresee a debate over what's going to happen to those Afghan refugees. Knowing today's Republican Party and knowing the context of our politics around immigration and other related matters, are you guys, the White House, prepared for that debate? And what's the position of the White House going to be about what happens with those, many of them very courageous Afghanis who have helped America over the course of the last 20 years in its mission there, about bringing them to America, taking them elsewhere? Give us a sense of how you think that debate's going to unfold.
Well, the first thing I can assure you is that President Biden is not thinking about any of this through the lens of politics. Right now, he's thinking about getting these people who have helped us, who have helped our men and women in uniform, out of the country. Obviously, there will be a rigorous vetting process, screening process. We are, the Department of Defense and the Department of State are working now on all of the immediate planning to move people to where they need to be. It's a massive logistical undertaking, but there's the full commitment from the President of the United States and the U.S. government to help as many people who have helped us over the last 20 years in Afghanistan as possible.
Kate, before we let you go, will President Biden, after his remarks today, take questions? He's given a couple of speeches. He did the interview with ABC News, but the White House press corps and the American people have a lot of direct questions for him. Will he take those today?
The president never shies away from taking questions. I'll let him make a decision if he's going to take questions this afternoon. But you saw he just did a full sit-down interview on this just yesterday. So he is always willing to take questions, and I'll let him decide if he's going to do that after his remarks today.
We will see White House Communication Director Kate Bedingfield in the pouring rain at the White House. Kate, thanks so much. We appreciate it.